Hello everyone, welcome. Welcome. Welcome to SBH, to an evening, a special event. Welcome everyone. Welcome. Glad you're here. Okay, trying to get you guys in. There you are. Hello. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Just welcome back, I should say.
Thank you. Thank you. It's very interesting. You've got a lot of people like requesting to join the live, and I'm like, I don't think I'm letting everybody in. I think it's just you that I'm supposed to let in. I was and a couple of weeks ago I was watching an Insta Live where somebody like kind of bombed it. And it was like, oh, get the person off. Like, how do we do this?
That sounds horrible.
Yeah, it was that.
Okay, so I'm glad you're the police tonight because that never happened to me.
Yes, I'm going to keep an eye on it. Let's see if we have our other participants are not here yet.
Okay.
That I've seen. Not yet.
Okay. I could get started with the intro. I just really did want to say welcome back to you. I don't know if everybody knows this, but Dvora was on our first Instagram Live that we ever had. And it really springboarded us to, hi, Amy.
Hi,
welcome.
guys. How are you?
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good.
Nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm just saying that Dvora did our first ever Instagram Live and really helped springboard us to a whole summer of Instagram Lives and now continuing until today. That was the first one with Frida Liniato and phenomenal. We have still have thousands of views, and I know I still refer back to it often, so really appreciate that. Tonight we're going to be hearing about first trimester loss. We actually did do a Your Miscarriage Matters. Our first series was last year, so this is really doing a focus on first trimester loss. I would say certainly the most wanted course and the most needed. Hi, Sarah.
Hi guys. How is everything?
Hi, Sarah.
Hi. Good to
Welcome. So excited to get this off. I just wanted to speak briefly about FBH fertility and about what we do. We really do hold your hand through the process of infertility, pregnancy loss, and postpartum issues. There for you through every upset, all the ups and downs, all the questions, all of the anxiety, all of the good things and the bad. We have support groups, we have referrals, we do fertility yoga, we do care packages, meals, anything that a couple may need on their journey. There has never been a moment that we have not been able to either give it to them directly or be able to refer back when necessary, refer out. I do want to speak a little bit about Dvora because her reputation absolutely precedes her, and we're so excited to have her back. But I just want to speak to everything that she's done up until this point. Tonight's another piece. So Dvora specializes in reproductive and perinatal mental health with advanced training by Postpartum Support International, ASRM, and the MISS Foundation in Compassionate Bereavement. Dvora is a clinical consultant for Yesh Tikva and Kanafayim, two organizations that we work very closely with, and as a lead trainer for Postpartum Support International. As an adjunct professor at Wurzeiler School of Social Work, she developed a maternal mental health curriculum for MSW students and teaches coping with loss. So we're definitely going to touch on that tonight. Dvora maintains a group private practice in Philadelphia and consults and presents nationally about mental health and supporting those in struggle. I think tonight we are breaking more new ground, just like we always do. I'm excited to actually also report, just speaking of new ground, that we have our first ever men's workshop coming up next week. If anybody's interested, please reach out. I'm going to be posting our number throughout the night. Please, you can call now Don't wait till tomorrow. There is never a better time. I know how hard it is to pick up that phone call, but it is such a burden lifted the second you leave that voicemail and just feel like somebody with you. I can't explain it. And just want to welcome Amy and Sarah tonight. Thank you in advance. I love you both. Can't wait to watch. I'm going out, but good luck.
Love you.
Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully everything will go smoothly, this Instagram world, but we'll see how we do. So, if something goes down, we'll come back on. We'll figure it out.
Okay, I'm here. I'm not going.
Very good. Thank you. So welcome to everybody who's joining us. Being able to watch it live, now or later, it's amazing that this is a topic of interest to you, that this is a topic that you're saying, I'm willing to choose to spend time talking about hard stuff. And I think that that's really kind of what speaks to the broader issue, is that there's a lot of things that we don't really feel very comfortable talking about. There's a lot of things that we kind of say, I know it exists, or I don't know it exists, until it happens to me, or happens to somebody I love, or happens to somebody that I care in my family. I mean, we're not quite as aware of how common it is. When I spoke to both of you, Amy and Sarah, both of you expressed that feeling of, I had no idea that this was I didn't even know what was happening, and I didn't know that this was a thing, and I didn't know that this was something that was actually as common as it is. And so just to set the stage to what are we talking about on a medical technical term, and then we'll do a little bit of the interpersonal stories as they exist, the personal stories, and then the interpersonal experience. And hopefully Sarah will figure out her Wi-Fi and be able to join us whenever she gets back in. But I want to start with the fact that we're talking about, when we talk about early loss, that's not really a medical term, right? So an early loss is what we're going to call miscarriage. And a miscarriage is anywhere between conception up to 20 weeks, actually. And some of us might be like, wait, 20 weeks is like halfway through a pregnancy. And that's true. And anything from 20 weeks up to the delivery, 40 weeks, is considered a stillbirth. We use those terms a little bit interchangeably. It's more of there's a medical component to this in terms of how a pregnancy is resolved in the event that the baby does not have a heartbeat, is not alive anymore. And this is something where, sorry, give me 1 second. Let me just allow our friend back in. Here we go. Sarah, we're getting you. Hopefully that works. And this is something where that's how we kind of are going to differentiate kind of medically. Those are the pieces that are important, as how this pregnancy is perceived from a medical procedure, a birth, a delivery, all of those things. But truthfully, none of that really matters when we're in a space of grieving, and we're in a space of this anticipation of pregnancy means baby. Pregnancy means I'm going to have a beautiful, full-term, big, bouncy baby girl or boy. I'm going to experience this among my family, in my community. Everybody knows about it eventually, and there's excitement. There's hope, there's excitement that goes along with it. And when that ends, and when that does not happen, there are so many facets of this that I think are important to note. The biggest one being shock, right? I did not see this coming. I had no idea that this was even a possibility. And you're going to hear from some of our very brave presenters tonight that part of coming to terms with having a miscarriage is also knowing that I no longer am naive about the fact that I can have a miscarriage. And if I am to tell you that the statistics is 1 in 4 pregnancies actually end in loss. 1 in 4. And if you think about how many women get pregnant so many times in our community alone, right? In the religious, the Jewish, the broader community, such an emphasis on families and large families. That means that there's a lot of things that are happening out there in the world relating to loss that nobody's talking about. And so the fact that we're choosing to discuss this tonight, hopefully will shed some light into the experience from a grief space, and also from a supportive space, that if this happens to somebody you love, maybe you'll know a little bit more about what to say, how to respond, that it won't be so startling as I didn't know this thing happens to us, like that it's not as rare as unfortunately we wish it was. And we'll kind of meander our way through the grief experience. I will intersperse the comments with our conversation with our presenters tonight, our speakers tonight. It's casual. Don't worry, you didn't have to bring a PowerPoint. It's a conversation among friends. And why don't we start with, Sarah, why don't you start? And let's kind of give it, a couple of minutes, 5-6 minutes. Talk to me about your loss experience. And then I'll reflect on that, and then I'll move on to Amy.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Fax. I'm so happy that we're doing this live because exactly what you said before, that when it happens to you, you think you're the only one and you don't know where to turn and you don't have anybody like around me experiencing the same thing. So I don't even know how to talk to somebody because they didn't go through it. So they don't even know the right words to say or, feel, it's very hard. So basically my story is, God bless, I got married. Like you said, you get married in this community, a year or two later or right away, you get pregnant. Yay, you're pregnant, you have a baby. Okay, now that baby turns 2 or 3. Let's start again. So now I have my first 2 boys. Thank God, got pregnant right away with both of them. My Ezra, he's 7 now, and I have my Jacob, who is 5 tomorrow. And I had them both, thank God, right away. No problems. Went to my doctor appointments. Everything looked great. Came to, giving birth, natural, like beautiful experiences, I have to say, minus the first 4 months of vomiting, obviously. But, everything else was great. I was so happy to be pregnant. It was like such a bond. Like I love being pregnant. I know like a lot of people tell you like, oh, I hate that feeling of like being pregnant. I loved it. I loved it. So special to me. And I had my first 2. And then after my second one, I took a little break. Not really a break. I found my career. I went to school. I just said, you know what, hon? I said, I'm not going to get pregnant when he turns 2 or 3. I just want to take a second. I want to reflect on myself and my family. And, it's not a race. I'm going to slow it down. Now it's like about 3 years later. My son is 3 years old. And I look around and I'm like, I'm ready to get pregnant. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, yeah, let's get pregnant. Let's try and see what happens. So thank God we try right away. Pregnant, first try. Ecstatic. I'm so excited. I haven't been pregnant in so long. And I get pregnant and I'm very in tune with my body. And I'm not getting the symptoms. Normally your breasts, they get very sore. The nausea starts, for me, like my body's like a time clock. I call my doctor. He's like, Sarah, it's very normal. Everybody gets it at different times. Some people start getting nauseous at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and maybe you're not going to get nauseous. You're very lucky. I'm like, oh, great. That's amazing. Like I get to feel good the first 4 months and not lose like 10 pounds. Okay, great. Now I go to the doctor and I had a little pain. I called the doctor and I was like, listen, I'm feeling a little pain and I'm a psycho. Worst thing to do, guys. Do not go to Google for answers. Just don't. It is the worst. I went on Google, ectopic pregnancy. I'm like, what? What do you mean? I'm a psycho. I can't sleep all night. I told my husband we have to go to the emergency room. I need a sonogram right now. I'm bugging up. I'm bugging out. I call my mom. She's like, yeah, you should go. I'm like, okay, fine, I'll go. They do a sonogram. They're like, listen, you're very early and we can't see anything. Like we really don't see anything. Like it's probably there, but it's too early to tell and we can't see anything, but it's not ectopic. I said, great. Now I go to, now my doctor tells me, you know what, Sarah, anyways, now that you were feeling something, I want you to go take a blood test. I said, okay, I'll go get a blood test. I take a blood test. He calls me back the week after. Can you go take another blood test? I said, why? He goes, oh, no, I just, like, the numbers were a little weird, and I just want to check it again, just make sure. I'm like, okay, maybe, like, I'm losing vitamin. I don't know. I thought maybe it's, like, a vitamin thing, like, folic acid, something like that. I go back, I get a phone call. I'll never forget this. I'm driving in the car with my sister, and the doctor calls me, and he tells me, Sarah, listen, are you sitting? And I said, what's up, doc? Like, I'm like, no, I'm driving. He goes, can you pull over? I said, why do you want me to pull over? So I pull over. My sister's right next to me, and I'm like, what's going on? And he said, listen, your blood came back, and your HCG, it's not doubling. I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm like, what HCG? I'm like, just give me a vitamin. We'll be fine. Calm down. He's like, listen, he's like, the HCG went low and you're going to have a miscarriage. I'm like, what? I look at my sister. I'm like, miscarriage? What are you saying? I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I'm like, what are you talking about, miscarriage? I'll come to the office tomorrow. You'll give me some vitamins or supplement, something. He said, no, I'm Sarah. I'm so sorry, but you're going to have a miscarriage. The baby's not healthy. And listen, you're 7. Oh, also the week before I went to the doctor, there was a heartbeat, by the way. So I'm already in that high, like what you were talking about before. It's like pregnant, baby, excitement. Oh my God, is it a boy? Is it a girl? Oh, I have 2 boys. A girl would be so nice. Like, I'm thinking already so ahead. When I saw the heartbeat, I was like already ready. I'm like, oh, I did the book. I wanted a girl. Like, you don't understand. I even like, I hate to say this, like, I even planned a month. I'm like, it was so nice to try in February. Like, now, like, I look back and I just laugh at myself. I saw
Hang tight, Sarah. We're losing you a little bit. Oh, yeah.
Is it my Wi-Fi good now? Or no?
Wait, hang tight. You were losing you a little bit on the Wi-Fi.
Am I good? Should I take it off my Wi-Fi? Should I take it off?
Is it connected?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's try. Hopefully.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. So now I told the doctor, I said, I can't believe you're telling me right now. I'm coming to the office. Can I come right now? It was like already 6 o'clock at night. I called my mom. I was like, listen, you got to go with the kids. I need to go to the doctor. He's like, yeah, of course, come now. So I come now, whatever. I go with my mom and my sister. I said, I can't do this by myself. I'm already hysterical crying. I go to the doctor. He does a sonogram. I said, I'm sorry. He's like, there's no heartbeat. Like, the baby's already gone. And at this point, I'm just like, I didn't even cry because, like, I don't know what he's saying. I'm in so much shock. Like, it's like a train hit me and I'm just, like, still standing. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no heartbeat? And he's like, I'm so sorry, but you're going to get a heavy period. So I said, like, what do I do? Like, is this normal? Am I okay? Is my husband normal? Like, I'm asking, like, questions. Like, does my husband need help? Do I need help? Are my eggs good now? Like, I have so many questions. I don't know what to say. And he's like, no, it's normal. Listen, it really takes a lot for a baby to be healthy, the sperm, the egg together. There's just so many aspects to like a healthy baby that we just take it for granted because we're always getting pregnant and giving birth. And thank God things are great. And just sometimes it happens.
Right.
So he's like,
I'm going to actually
hang
tight with me for 1 second because I really want to address that like from a medical and also emotional perspective, and then I'm going to come back. Like we'll flip flop a little bit back and forth. Keep it exciting. But I think that what I want to acknowledge is 2 things. One is, why do we have miscarriages? Like, what happens in the body when a person has a miscarriage? There's primarily 2 reasons. One is something relating to the person who is the host, right? The person who is hosting the pregnancy. It could be a placental issue, a hormonal issue, not vitamins, but hormonal issue. Mm-hmm. It could be an issue of, there's something in the structure of her body that she struggles with conception, and that might obviously is not necessarily relevant when she has a previous healthy baby. It could be something where there is something relating to structure, or there's an infection. Those are some samples of reasons why a person would miscarry. And those are typically things that would happen, in the beginning of a pregnancy. The other reason is that there's something wrong with the baby. So host versus baby. And one of the primary reasons that a person miscarries is it's really Hashem's way, God's way of saying, this didn't divide and the cells did not divide properly. Yep. And we've got too many of this kind of cell, too few of this kind of cell. We're going to kind of like stop the process, call a timeout, end the pregnancy, and the pregnancy will stop growing, or the baby will stop growing. That is the typical kind of way of either one being structural, something's wrong with the host, the placenta, the hormones, infection, illness. And the other would be if there's something's wrong with the development of the baby. So very often that's a genetic concern, right? So there's something that genetically doesn't look good and healthy, and the body stops developing that pregnancy. That could be in the early months of pregnancy, that can be later on. And then those are the 2 primary things that we deal with. Genetic, something, if they choose to, if there is something to test, then there is something where you can possibly send it in for genetic testing. They can say, actually, this was genetically abnormal. And that's why we now have a reason why the pregnancy ended. But I will say to you, that's not as likely to be available to somebody with early loss. Because very often, and this is graphic, and I share this sensitively, and for those of you that have experienced the loss, these are complicated conversations to be listening to. I didn't say trigger warning because I feel like that's almost like obvious that we're talking about early losses. But for people who've experienced loss, these conversations are particularly triggering and difficult. But for many women, they pass the pregnancy at home, right? Like you described, heavy period, some kind of significant clotting. Some people will call it passing a fetal tissue. There's nothing really that needs to be done with that. It's extremely early. It doesn't have a figure of a child, doesn't look like a baby that early in the pregnancy. And it can be an emotionally very complex thing. It could feel like a birth. If you've been pregnant before, your body the uterus begins to contract. It goes right down into it, right? And those are the kinds of things that we are aware of in this loss experience. But what you're also describing is the stunningness of it in that, wait, how is this happening to me? And also, how did I not see it happening? Like, how did I not see that it was about to happen, right? Everything was fine yesterday, and now it's
last
not.
week, a week before, the heartbeat's strong, and he tells me strong heartbeat. Strong.
Exactly. And I would say to you that one of the hardest things about early loss in particular, but it's same later through pregnancy, is the not knowing. And more often than not, we don't know why a pregnancy ends. And that also really, that's a tugging very, very deeply into that space of like, I don't know how to handle this situation.
Right.
So I'm going to ask Sarah, hang tight for me. I'm going to flip over to Amy, if that's okay. I want to hear Amy's first experience, the first part of your experience as well. We'll kind of go back and forth. Amy, would you like to share your story?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Betesh. Thank you, SBH, for having a group like this, because I have to say, for someone who experienced, as I'll tell you my story, a miscarriage at my first pregnancy, I wish I had someone to turn to. I mean, although so many people reached out, this is an amazing thing for people to have, and an amazing resource to, give out information that so many people don't know about. So my story, typically, like Sarah said, I got married. We were married for about a year. We both looked at each other. We're like, okay, I think it's time. We started trying, and it took us a few months. It took us 4, 5, 6 months. So that in itself was definitely challenging. I went to a doctor. Everything checked out fine. All levels are fine. Don't worry. Keep trying. It could take up to a year or two. Okay, so we kept at it. It took us about 6 or 7 months to finally get pregnant. And then again, like Sarah said, that moment when you get pregnant, it's like, holy cow. And this was my first pregnancy. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be a mom. And my husband was going to be a dad. And there was just so much excitement. And I'm the baby in the family. So my mom and my parents were going crazy. And it was like a big hoopla. And I remember in the beginning saying, okay, I'm not really feeling anything. So I don't know, it's my first pregnancy. Maybe I'm not supposed to be feeling it yet. So I went to the doctor for the first appointment, and he checked me, and he was like, okay, you're really early. So, we'll see in 2 weeks. And then I went home, and those.
Oh, we lost you. We lost your audio.
Sorry.
There you go.
Do you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
So those 2 weeks were a little crazy. I remember having severe back pain, and I remember calling my parents in bed at night and crying to my husband and telling my mom, it just doesn't feel right. Something just doesn't feel right. And my parents were telling me, Amy, you've never been pregnant before. How could you know that it doesn't feel right? And I said, I don't know, Ma, something doesn't feel right. And I remember my father distinctly telling me, Amy, have faith in Hashem. Whatever is meant, and whatever it is, you'll get through it, but, be positive. And I said, okay, I'll be positive. And we walked into that second appointment, and we sat there, and my mom was with us, and we walked into the office, and he put the sonogram on, and in my heart, I feel like the doctor knew already. And we'll never forget, he looked at my husband and I and my mom, and he said, Amy, you'll have better days. And I looked at him, and just like Sarah said, I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, what was I supposed to see just now that you didn't see? Like, what? And my mom started crying, and my husband started crying, and I started crying. And I was like, okay, I have no idea what's going on right now. This is my first pregnancy. I'm not sure how this appointment was supposed to go, but doesn't seem like it went the way it was supposed to. And the doctor, like, very gently told me, Amy, this one wasn't good, but next one will be good. And he sent me home and told me, meet me in the hospital tomorrow morning, and we'll do a DNC. And like Sarah said, like, these words were flying at me. Here I am, a 22-year-old girl. I had no idea what he was talking about. And I'm like, oh, what? Meet you in the hospital? You want me to go home now? Like, knowing that whatever's in my stomach is not good. You're sending me home. And then it set in. And my entire family and all my in-laws all came to our apartment in the city that night. And it's a very vivid memory, and I don't have the best memory, but it's a vivid memory, even 16, 17 years ago, because we all sat there and we mourned, and it was tough. It was very tough. My husband and I looked at each other and we said, can we ever get pregnant? Can we ever have a healthy baby? Is this ever going to happen for us? And there were so many questions and so many things up in the air. And what I do remember is those days following it, once like the cousins heard and the family heard, we got so many phone calls from people saying, oh, this happened to me. I had 3 miscarriages. You'll be okay. And in my family, we never knew from this. I have one sister and my mom, and, you know, thank God my sister had 4 beautiful children, and we never heard from this.
Me too.
We never knew about miscarriages. And I remember my mother and my sister telling me, you don't worry. God forbid, if you can't carry a baby, we'll carry it for you. Because it was really at that point where I sat there and I was like, how do I know if I'm ever going to be able to be a mom? And that was really tough. It was, yeah.
I appreciate so much the breakdown of the scenarios. One of the things that I'm also hearing in you is the fact that you actually had family around you, which is actually fairly unique for an early loss experience. And I think that's one of the most challenging pieces about first trimester, in particular, first trimester losses, is that very often it's incredibly private and nobody knows. And so they didn't know you were pregnant, and so therefore they didn't know that you lost. They might find out later, but in terms of having family and the support around you is quite exceptional and quite rare. And I would say that I would suggest that that's one of the actually hardest things about those early losses is the isolation that goes along with those losses, that we don't have that platform of people knowing and therefore people being aware and grieving with you. But the other thing that you said is that we sat around and we grieved. And I think that that's one of the things that I have come to deeply, deeply understand about pregnancy loss in particular, is that we are a very ritualized community, right? If a person loses a loved one, we sit Shiva. We know how to tear Kriya. We know how to go to a graveside. We go to Shiva. We go to Shloshim. We know what yahrzeit looks like, right? I know the rituals that are associated with grieving the loss of a loved one. And yet in our ritual structure, there isn't ritual associated or required when it comes to pregnancy loss. And so there's this like space, this vacuum, this absence of ritual that is particularly difficult for people who are trying to go, what do I do now? Like, where do I go with this pain when I don't get to sit Shiva and I don't get to grieve in this very structured way? And the structure has worked for me until now, and now there's no structure, right? What do I do with those feelings? What do I do with those feelings? And I think the acknowledgement of grief feeling and looking very different. The grief is the same. The bereavement is different. We differentiate between the two. The grief, the feelings, the emotion are the same, but the bereavement is unique, right? And that it's also a grief of, in many ways, we call this an ambiguous loss. It's like, I lost something, but did I ever have it? I lost this dream, right? I lost this expectation. I lost this future. I lost my imagination. I lost my trust in myself and my body and my beliefs of like, well, of course, X, Y, Z. Of course I will get pregnant, have a baby, and name it after my mother-in-law, right? Like that's what we do. Or that's what you do. That's not right, but that's what we do, right?
You picture everything before.
Exactly. Like we're already discussing names, and in some communities, you're already discussing where you are registering for preschool. Right? So what do we do when we're mourning something that I'm grieving something that I'm not quite sure I ever actually had? And we label that an ambiguous loss or a disenfranchised loss because there isn't a structure in our society in general, not just Jewish religious, but in community at large, there really isn't that much of a structure, a place for us to fully grieve those kinds of losses. So I love how you are kind of unfolding your story for us, and I'm grateful for that. And I also feel the rawness of it. 16 years later, it's right there. It's really right there under the surface. And as we move forward, and hopefully we'll get Sarah to get a good internet connection. Sarah, find another spot in the house. But one of the things that I'm thinking about that I want to acknowledge as well is that what do I do with this experience is probably one of the biggest questions that we have from people. Like, do I have 4 children or do I have 5 children? right? And I know you said that you have 4 living children, and then there was more than one loss, right? So why don't, while we're getting Sarah's back online, why don't we talk a little bit about what it is like for you, not necessarily the end of the story just yet, but what is it like for you to talk about that loss experience? How do you think about it today, 15 years later?
So honestly, and yeah, like you said, it was 2 miscarriages in the end, and I don't think about it on a daily basis. I have discussed it with my children, like I have told them. I think it hits me most when I go to doctors or whatever, and they ask me, "So what number pregnancy is this?"
Yes.
And I'm like, "Oh, wait, I have to count those other 2 that I missed." So I don't think about it on a daily basis. But recently, 3, 4 years ago, I was in school and I had to write a paper about the most poignant, point in my life. And the first thing that came to mind for me were these miscarriages. And I was like, wow, okay, let me try, but I'm not a good writer. And how am I going to write 4 pages on this? And I ended up sitting down and typing it, I want to say in like 20 minutes. And while I typed it, I cried. And while I read it, and this again is 3 years ago. So this is 15 years later. While I typed it, I cried. While I read it, I cried. I called my husband in work and I said, wait, I have to just say this. Like, I need to just get this off my chest. I read it to him and I cried. And I called my mom and I cried. So as much as it may be deep down in there, and it's not something that I necessarily think about every day, when I do think about it and when it does come up, it's there. It's there and it hurts still till today. And thank God, Hashem blessed me with 4 beautiful children. But it's definitely still there. So do I say that, I have more than 4 children? No, I have 4 beautiful children, thank God. But yeah, it'll always be there. I think it'll always be there.
And I want to acknowledge how important it is for people to be accepting of this will always be there. There's a kind of an understanding sometimes, or a misunderstanding, I would say, in the grief experience of like, I need to put it behind me. It needs to be part of my past. It needs to be something that's like not part of my story today. And really what you're describing is the complete opposite. And to me, it's healthier, right? To me, this is a much more authentic experience of grieving, is to say, of course it's part of me. I carried 2 other pregnancies. They didn't last. They didn't sustain. They didn't end up into the living baby, but those were part of my story. The term we'll use in the world of grief work is integration. Like, the goal is not to get over it. The goal is not to get beyond it, to forget about it. And most of the time we're hearing things like, you need to get over it, or when are you going to get over it? And instead, what we really want us to be considering is actually, how do I integrate this into this fabric of my story? It's part of who I am. If you are going to put it in your past, then it doesn't belong to you anymore. And would you really disown the love that you felt for that pregnancy, that baby, that potential? Right? Most of us would say, no, but I love that child. That was going to be this child. That was my imaginary child that was very real to me. Even if I didn't feel pregnancy symptoms, I saw that heartbeat, or I knew that there was potentially a heartbeat there. And so integration is one of saying, this is part of my story. No, I don't think about it all the time. It's not constant in my mind. I don't cry about it every day. But when somebody says to me, how many children do you have? Or how many times have you been pregnant? That's that moment of you go, like a gasp of, like, it catches in your throat. And it's the acknowledgement of, well, actually, I've been through stuff. I've been through hard moments. I've been through pain. I've been through losses. And yes, I can be grateful at the same time as I hold this memory in my hand, in my heart. It's there. It's part of me as a mother. It's part of exactly who I am. So I'd love to try, Sarah, let's see if we can hear from you a little bit of, I'd love to hear from you, if we can jump around just a bit in your story. I'd like to hear how you kind of integrate this story of loss into who you are today. How do you perceive it, think about it, experience it? When you're not on an Insta Live, what are some of on a live, what are some of the ways that you kind of create, what is the story that you tell around that process? Sarah, I'm so sorry. We're having such a difficult time hearing you. I'm sorry. Is there another place that you might be able to hide? We can hear you now. Let's see.
No.
We'll hold. The image keeps on loading. Maybe there's another location in the house, or
Is it a little better?
yes, let's give everybody a sec. Let's give Sarah a moment.
Let me try. Is
Let's see.
it
It's
better?
like stuttered.
Better? Can you hear me? Okay.
Let's see.
Okay,
Try.
good. Okay, good. So it
I
was
can hear
really
you.
the second miscarriage was the one that really like took me down, because the first one, it's like everyone's like, it's normal, it's fine, you'll be fine, you'll get pregnant again. And then when I got pregnant the second time, and same thing, wasn't feeling right. You just know as a mom, like you just didn't feel right. And, I called the doctor. He tells me, go to we're going to do your blood test again, whatever. So we did the blood test. He tells me, now your progesterone went low. I'm like, what? Now you tell me HCG. What are these words? Now progesterone. I'm like, what's happening? Like, I can't keep up. I'm like, okay, is there a vitamin for that? Is there something I can take for that? He goes, yes, for this, you could take a suppository. I said, okay, thank God, something. So now I do the suppository. It's already too late. Same thing. Went 7 weeks for the sonogram. Heart rate was strong. The week after, it's already, the bleeding is heavy. And he tells me, I'm so sorry. The doctor cried with me. He cried with me. I'm with this doctor since I got married. I'm 20 years old. And this miscarriage happened when I was like 29. He started crying with me. He's like, Sarah, I'm telling you, next kid, Bezrat Hashem, we're going to figure this out. We're going to keep. And I also, by the way, remember when we were talking on the phone, we said how 3 miscarriages is then you considered high risk. I do. And I told my doctor, listen, I mean, everybody's different situation, but because I was so depressed, I told him, I'm a high risk. I said, I want to do a blood test every single week from the beginning, from before I even conceive. That's for me, it just made me more comfortable, because I just have a fear of just even carrying a baby, even trying to get pregnant. So then when they told me I had another miscarriage, to be the day after my miscarriage, my DNC, was my sister's breasts. Meaning a week before. The reason I'm saying this is because I know how everyone feels. You get a miscarriage. This one's having a party with her baby. This one's pregnant. This one's glowing. And you're so happy for them. But like deep inside, you're like, but why is it so easy for her? And for me, it's so hard. Why is that fair? Yep. It's not fair. And of course, like I have so much faith, and I'm I have a lot of emunah in Hashem, but just in the moment, you just can't understand why this is happening to you. Now,
no.
Yeah.
Right. Let me take a pause on that, just because I love that comment, because so many people say, I was never a jealous person, but boy, am I jealous right now, right? Yeah. And oh my gosh, Hashem's going to punish me because I'm jealous. God's going to come back. He's going to smite me down, right?
In your mind, like it's you're so lucky and I'm not. You can't, it's just hard.
Right. Exactly. Right. And I think that what I want to do is acknowledge at this point, like just take a pause in this and say, of course you feel that way. No, it's not really jealousy, because you want her baby. You want your baby, right? Jealousy is, I want your Corvette. I want your car. I want your house. I want your thing, right? But this moment, these are triggers. There are moments in time. And I will say, especially, I talked about, when I talked with Rachel about, like, should we be doing an Insta Live right before Purim? And like, are people going to come? And, by the fact that the numbers on the screen, they're here, right? Purim is one of the most difficult time for people who just had losses. It's like, how am I going to open the door to all these cute little matching outfits and mine aren't here? My child is not here. Or people who thought that they were due right before Purim and they were going to have they had this costume already picked out, and there's no baby to have a costume matching with. And I don't want to even face the world because I'm in so much pain, and yet I'm supposed to be happy, right? But Purim is one of those hardest holidays for people who experience loss and infertility. But it's something that it's like the whole world seems to be able to do this thing that should be so natural. And how did I get stuck with this other crowd of women? How did I get stuck in that crowd? Like, this is not the cool crowd to be a part of, right? I want to be the glowing pregnant person crowd. And yet here I am. And how, again, stunning it is. And also how like you just said, everywhere I turn, I'm triggered. everywhere I turn, I see bellies and babies and pregnancies and carriages, right? And those are definitely things that we want to acknowledge, especially, just by the way, just as a notice to the community component of this. When you go into the next several weeks, in the next several days, as you go into the holidays, be thinking about who are you coming to the door with when you're going to somebody
holiday.
who
The
doesn't
holiday
have
you
children,
celebrate with family,
right? What
so,
are you
you know.
saying? Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And if you know that someone just had a loss and they're coming to your su'udah, they're coming to celebrate with you, maybe you check in with them a moment before, or an hour, a few hours before, and say, hey, I'm so glad you're joining us, but I know that this holiday might be particularly difficult because you just experienced a loss. And I just want you to know I'm noticing. I know. And whatever you need to feel more comfortable, you take it. If you need to leave, you need to stay, you want to go, you want to sit, you want to stand, whatever works for you. I think the acknowledgement of how complex these holiday experiences are, specifically Purim, is one of those ways that we connect as a community to say, I'm seeing you, I'm noticing the grief experience. Rachel, maybe, not Rachel, I'm sorry. Amy, could you discuss, I'm looking at Rachel on the bottom. Amy, can you talk a little bit about what it's like for you to navigate, what it was like for you after those losses to navigate the world again and the interaction with other people?
So it definitely was tough, just like you're saying. I remember after I had my first miscarriage, I went to Florida for the week, like just to get away. But like you said, everywhere I turned, someone was pregnant. And I think what affected me most also, and I had a second miscarriage after my first baby, was going through each pregnancy again and the anxiety that came with it. And every day waking up and saying, do I have symptoms today? Am I nauseous? Am I still pregnant? Should I go to the doctor? Should I go double check? And then had pregnancies where there was bleeding, and I'm like, oh boy, I'm losing this one too.
Yeah.
So I think the anxiety that came along with the following pregnancies was a very big thing for me. I would have to call my husband all the time, and he'd have to like literally calm me down. And I'm like, but what if something's wrong? And what if it's not okay? And what if the doctor's appointment is not going to go well? And it was up until 24 weeks, 25 weeks, and I had my miscarriages early. But still, like up until a certain point, and even until delivery, there was just always that anxiety. So like when people would say, oh, we're so excited for you, good luck. There was always that little, that little bit of me that held it in still and wasn't like super excited yet. Especially in the beginning, like before we told, like normally with our first pregnancy, we were both super excited to tell my family and my husband's family. And like I said in the beginning, we're so tight knit that everybody knew I was pregnant from the first day because we were just so excited. But every pregnancy thereafter, it was like, hon, let's not tell everyone yet. And he was like, but why? And I was like, because you never know. So that part was definitely hard for the following pregnancies, and the anxiety, the everyday anxiety. It was just never a carefree, beautiful pregnancy. And thank God they were all beautiful pregnancies in the end. But definitely took that anxiety with me through each one of them after.
And I think somebody noted in our comments that it's like PTSD, right? And it really is. It really is that post-traumatic stress disorder, that
and you get the positive.
of
normally you jump in, you're like you won like $1 million in the lottery. I saw the stick. I'm like, oh no, I have to go to the doctor.
Right.
Pregnant. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this again. That's what it was.
Right. Exactly. And I think it's important to label that as anxiety. So, we talk about very frequently, and we're talking about postpartum anxiety or perinatal anxiety. I would like to suggest that there is no way to go through a post-loss pregnancy without the anxiety. You know too much, right? It's a kind of a joke in my family when I have a sibling, thank God, who had told me that she was pregnant, thank God, over 9 months ago. And she said to me, I'm expecting. And I was like, so how many weeks do I get to be anxious for? Like I know way too much. She's like, about 36. I'm like, great. This is going to be so much fun. Like I held the pregnancy anxiety with her, but there really is no way to go through future pregnancies once you've experienced a loss without the anxiety. And like you said, like Amy, the one of the things that you're saying is that idea of like, even when I pass the timeline where I lost the previous pregnancies, it doesn't mean my anxiety goes away, right? It's like, wait, but it could always happen next week. It could always happen the week after. So I think that that's really quite powerful in terms of acknowledging the anxiety as it exists and that this is a real feature potentially of pregnancy, and one that I also want to be, very mindful of as a therapist, that perinatal anxiety is a real thing and very, very complex, and something that we also really need to manage. It isn't just something where we go, well, whatever, I'm anxious and miserable and not sleeping and ruminating all night long and up all night long, right? And we really want to encourage that if you are struggling with anxiety in pregnancy, especially if you're pregnant post-loss, get help. Don't try to do this alone, because you will get through it with support of other people around you. But the kind of swirling around in your head rumination can be incredibly, incredibly complex and difficult and exhausting.
Now that you're saying it, I actually did. It actually just came back to me now. I did see someone.
There you go.
I think it was my third child, where my mom looked at me and she's like, this is just not healthy. Like, you are so nervous and so worried, and it's not good for the baby that you're carrying right now, and you need to go see someone. And I did. I went to go see someone to help me through it, because the level of anxiety was through the roof. And it's just not healthy. Like, it wasn't healthy for myself or the pregnancy at that point. So my mom's like, you're just doing yourself harm.
So after my second,
and so I did go see someone.
Yeah, after my second miscarriage,
by the way,
now
said
she
that.
said
Go
she
ahead.
spoke to somebody. The doctor called me now, whatever. I gave birth the pregnancy after the second miscarriage. I had my beautiful son, Evan. So it was good, thank God. But with him, he's 9 months now. The doctor called me at 4 weeks, and he said, your progesterone went down. I froze, and I said, please, God, not again. That's exactly the words I said, please, God, not again. And then I forgot how I found out. I think one of my clients was telling me about SBH fertility. And imagine, she's just my client. We just spoke about it one time. She was telling me her story. This is why it's so important to talk to people, guys, because she had no idea what I was going through. And she's my client for months. So we opened up to each other. And she's like, SBH fertility, they could help you. And you could always call them. There's always somebody to talk to. I'm like, there's somebody to talk to about miscarriages? Wait, really? I was in shock. And when the doctor called me about my progesterone going down, I said, no, I really need help. I'm in a big depression. I'm in a depression. I don't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to eat anything. I wasn't a good mom to my other boys, which is that's already, a red flag. You can't be a good mother to your kids that are alive and well. There's something wrong. So I'll never forget, I called Rachel. I love you, Rach. I have to give you a shout out because you helped me so much. I called her up and I told her my whole story, and I was hysterical crying to her. And I said, I can't do this again. She said, we have your back. We'll hold your hand. We'll find you doctors. We'll find you specialists. We'll do everything we can for you to have that baby. And then she connected me with somebody that went through something similar. And I called her. And it wasn't even a doctor. She's just somebody going through it. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say her name. I mean, I'm technically allowed to say her name because she's alive, but Esther Moseri, I love your life. And she told me her story, and I said, wait, so I'm not the only one? And then she connected me with a specialist who I also love, and I spoke to the specialist and said, listen, Sarah, she goes, you know what, let's pray and hope. Obviously, she said, your doctor's doing everything right. So I thought it's my doctor's fault, because when you there's nobody else to blame, you have to blame somebody. And I was blaming my doctor at this point, but maybe he should have put me on progesterone from the second I even got pregnant. Maybe he did something wrong, but it wasn't him, because he was doing the right protocols. I was just second guessing because I'm not confident in my pregnancy, and I'm scared. And I'm scared, and it's scared. Then the specialist told me, she goes, your doctor's doing everything right. She goes, if God forbid, Sarah, it doesn't go right. She goes, because it's possible. Your progesterone is low right now. She goes, we're going to do everything, testing. We're going to do progesterone from before you even think about getting pregnant. We'll do everything we can. And then the second we're in the clear zone, you'll go back to your doctor. We'll be okay. And if I tell you, just the positivity of that specialist, obviously, I was on the progesterone night and day. I was working hard, keeping myself healthy. But I think just the positivity saved my pregnancy. Just the positivity. Because I feel like sometimes, sometimes,
I'd like to do something, kind of just take a moment. Everybody has the comment bar on the bottom. Can you put a thumbs up in the comment bar if you or someone that has had a miscarriage? We have 152 people on the call. If you or someone do you know someone who has had a miscarriage? Let's see how many checks we can get in the bottom. Just watch this happen. You can put hearts, whatever you want to do. Let's make it kind of light up for a minute. Somebody has had a miscarriage. I would imagine we're going to start seeing, kind of things kind of popping up, right? Exactly. Because for every one of these, there may be one loss, there could be two losses, there could be, oh, I have multiple people that I know, right? We are not alone in this experience at all, right? Look at the hearts flying, look at the check marks, look at the thumbs up. Yeah.
So we
Like
help
this
each
is
other.
really,
And
really relevant. Absolutely.
you know, you're so
Yeah.
not telling your story.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, why is
want
it supposed to be a secret?
Right. Right.
It's your time, you know, when it's a hard time for you. So
Right. When you're going through a hard time. One of the things I really would like to kind of also kind of zone in on is this idea of positivity, but also the idea that you're also allowed to be scared and
yes,
you're also allowed to grieve the losses. So that, yes, do we have some power, maybe some level of power of like, you know, I have to have a good energy, good positivity, all of that. Believe in it as much as you choose to. Not sure how much that exactly influences pregnancy in particular when it comes down to science, but however, it also makes it maybe a little bit more manageable if you can stay around positive and helpful people. But I also want to be careful because we're not focusing on what we can call toxic positivity. You know, like, oh, I got to be happy. And if I'm not happy, something's going to happen, right? Instead, can we be present with multiple feelings at one time? Can I be present with the fact that there are going to be components of a future pregnancy that are difficult? Can I also be present with the fact that losing a pregnancy is really hard and really sad? And it may be helpful that there are living children at home to go home to crawl into their beds and cuddle with, and to be so thankful that I have these children to hold and nourish and nurture. But I still lost something important to me. And so am I grateful and can I grieve? And really the essence, especially in pregnancy loss, early pregnancy loss, that first trimester losses, and really truthfully of any gestational age, it's truly about being given and giving others, but also giving yourself permission to grieve. That too often they say, well, if I don't have ritual, then I shouldn't be. Or because nobody knew about it, then I shouldn't be. And really kind of, where's the space for me to do these things? And what we know from a therapeutic space, a medical, emotional, behavioral health, is giving permission to grieve is the essence of the grief work. It's not those 5 stages things that everybody talks about. Those are actually from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and it's actually the 5 stages of dying, not the 5 stages of grieving. So it's misunderstood. The grief world has kind of like captured it, but it doesn't work. And actually, she later on in her life regretted creating them in the first place, because she says it's like, you know, it's not it's not what's important. Every person's experience is going and journey through grief is going to look very different. And so thinking that I have to like check box, wait, did I do anger yet? Did I do denial? Did I do acceptance? Oh shoot, I skipped the line, right? No. Grief can be happy today and sad tomorrow. Grief can be capable of smiling at your child's Siddur party and inside feeling so much pain that there isn't another child along with them that was supposed to come next, right? All of those experiences, that ability to do multiple emotions and feelings, is all the grief work that we need to do. Somebody will say to me then, what would be like, what's wrong? Like, what's bad grieving, right? What does that look like? And I think that the only answer to that question, to me, is the not grieving. Is to say, what am I grieving? I'm nothing, not sad. It's fine. It just happens and it's over and I'm okay. And that may be a way that people handle it. Some of that is generational, definitely. Some of the previous generations, especially ones where miscarriage was actually much more frequent, and infant and neonatal mortality was significantly higher, right? But because we're not in that generation today, then this generation is a little bit more emotionally attuned. For us, the grief work is intense and significant and important. So therefore giving yourselves the permission to grieve versus saying, I'm fine, I don't want to talk about it, I'm fine. That's where I get nervous. The person who says to me 15 years later, it brings me to tears sometimes, I'm going, yep, that's grief work. It's right there. It's part of who I am. And I allow the tears, right? Can I allow the tears? Can I say, wow, I remember that date. That was the date that I went to the hospital. Or that was the date of my procedure. Oh my gosh, I forgot for a minute and now I remembered, right? Or when I celebrate a birthday and I think, gosh, there's such an age gap between my kids. Oh, right, because I had multiple losses
and the worst
between this child and that
when
child.
people ask you,
And
like,
so just the
why are you
noticing.
taking such a big break between your kids? Like, you're not getting young. Like, Should I tell you like my or
Right. So I'm going to say that let's like kind of zone in on that for a minute as we're kind of in the last few minutes of our live together. But what I think is super important, if I shift gears to community, if I think about like, what do I want you to know as a community supporter, as someone who maybe never experienced miscarriage, maybe never even had a child who had a miscarriage, thank God you've made it this far. What do I want you to know? There are certain comments that each of you just identified that are particularly painful. How many kids do you have is a hard comment for someone. You can say to somebody, so how old are your children? That's different. It allows me the space to give whatever the answers are without having to acknowledge that someone's missing, right? Or even the comment of, oh, she's your youngest, right? Well, maybe it wasn't intentional that she was my youngest, but you had to kind of like zone in on that one, right? Or saying to somebody like, oh my gosh, you're so smart, you took a break, right? I've heard people saying, wait, which rabbi did you ask for permission to go on birth control? I have heard people ask that, right? Wait, which rabbi did you get to talk to about birth control? And it's like, oh my God, like these people are struggling with infertility and that's the comment, right? But I will say to you that there are those in community that also struggle with the idea of people think I'm on birth control. I would love to have a baby. So there's like an exposure piece when time passes. So I think that my message to community is also like, don't make assumptions about anything. And the less you say about those spaces in time and the age of the children and the number of the kids, the better you are, the better off you are. Amy, why don't you offer a message, a thought? What would you like to suggest either to those that are part of the community helpers, the supporters, or to those that have gone through or are going through miscarriage? What's your message to them?
I think my biggest message that I feel like I took out of this is, again, talking to people. I think that's really what helped me get through the first, when I realized that I'm not in this alone and this happens to other people, even though it didn't happen in my immediate family. And we've never experienced such a thing, but it happens, and it's terrible, but it's okay. And people move on, and people have beautiful children, thank God. And you get through it, even though at the time you think you'll never get through it. Like I thought I would never be able to conceive a child. And like you mentioned earlier, like what was wrong with me as a woman? Like this was my job. I was put on this earth to have children, and like my body failed me. I failed myself. I failed my husband. Like there were so many things in it. But when you talk to other people and you see that so many people went through it and so many people got through it, I think that is really what I take from this. And like Sarah said, that's why I'm so open to talk about this, because when you see other people struggling and you know what it feels like to be alone, and even though we had such a tight-knit family and everybody knew about it, my in-laws and my own family, but still to hear from outsiders that this happens and you're not in this alone, and it happened to me, but I got through it and I have 4 beautiful children, I think is so important. So I think this group that you have, everyone should take full advantage of, because it's an invaluable resource to have that, to have a group of people, like Sarah said, to call a friend that had the same exact story as you and to go through the details and reminisce together, and have someone that felt what you felt is a very big, very big, amazing thing to have.
Before I move it over to Sarah, one comment that I'm gonna challenge you on, that idea of moving on versus moving forward. You don't have to move on, which almost feels like I have to leave something behind. When I move forward, I can take it with me. And I think it's an important kind of shift in languaging, like when are you going to get over it? When are you going to move on? That almost feels like there's a concrete ending that has to happen. There doesn't have to be a concrete ending, and there isn't one, exactly, as you acknowledge. And so moving forward is more mindful of the actual process that people have to go through in experiencing this loss and these experiences. Sarah, what about you? A message to the community?
So my message to everybody is, be strong. And exactly what Amy said, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. It really is. And also, I just feel like it's so hard. It's definitely hard, and there's help. And speech fertility is, this is a crazy breakthrough in our community. Like I don't know if anybody like this is never heard of, and you have this beautiful foundation there for you whenever you need them. And exactly what you said, like just talk it out. You have to talk to everybody. You need support. Support's going to get you through. Support from your family, your friends. Don't be afraid to open up. and you're not, you're not the only one. You're not alone. You're never alone.
You're
Even
not
when you
alone.
feel like you're really
you're not
alone, you're
alone.
never alone. And
Right.
and exactly.
Right. So let me ask you a question. As I took some of the wording apart in Amy's comment, I'm going to take a word apart in yours. What does be strong really mean, though? Be strong.
So for me,
What
be
does that
strong
mean?
means like be positive and just, I don't know, just have, also like you have to have faith, because I lost that. I lost that faith. I did. And I'm not going to lie to you guys.
Okay.
I blamed him. I was like, oh, why are you doing this to me?
Right.
I pray every day. I'm a good person. Like you nitpick at yourself. And really what happens is, I want to tell everybody, you appreciate life so much more. Do you know how many things I took for granted before my miscarriages? I took everything for granted. After my miscarriages, Amy, I don't know about you, but nothing was so important anymore. Things that we used to flip out about, like, I have to go buy groceries, I'm late. I have to pick this for dinner, and I have to go buy this. And everything was just like, I'll get it. I'll do it. Just thankful I'm here.
Yeah. I was just with a woman who we were meeting up for a walk, and she has lost a child. And she said to me, she's like, I'm going to grab a coffee. And she gets a coffee and she comes out and she says to me, the guy was like, do you want white or dark? Light roast, dark roast, froth, no froth, milk, ice, almond. And she looked at me, she goes, I just buried my child. I don't care. Like nothing matters. But I want to talk about what that word strong is, because I think sometimes, again, like the move on perspective, strength might look different for every person. And I would like to suggest that strength can look like coming onto Instagram and talking about your losses. Strength can be, I don't need to do this by myself. I'm going to reach out to a friend and ask for support. Strength can be crying because that's worthy of crying about. Strength can be saying, I'm going to try again, even though I'm terrified at the possibility of loss again. Strength can be, I'm going to lean on you right now because I know that in the future you will lean on me, because I was willing to be vulnerable with you and open and honest. And I know that that's hard for me, but it takes strength to do that with others. Strength is to talk about the hard stuff. And so strength doesn't mean closed and cold and formal and happiness exclusively. Strength is to say, I'm going to actually get up and make dinner tonight, because it's going to take every single ounce of my strength to do that when I'm grieving. Strength also means taking care of my children, even though I want to just curl up under my covers and not get out of bed for a couple of days. So I want each of you that are listening to think about, what does being strong mean? And can we redefine that just a little? In the post-loss and grieving world, strength will look very different for every person. And so therefore I would suggest, can I acknowledge the strength of others? Not, oh my gosh, you're so amazing, or, oh my gosh, it's going to work out perfectly, because frankly, I can't promise you that. I don't know that there won't be a second
Can I
one.
just add something quickly?
I don't know that there won't be a third.
I just wanted to say something, because for anybody that knows anybody going through a miscarriage, remember I told you after the ceremony, I locked myself in the room and I didn't want to get out. My cousin came over. I'll never forget this. I died for her life. I wish I could say her name, but I can't. And I'm not letting anyone in the room. Everyone's like knocking and like, Sarah, can I come in? And I'm like, I'm not even answering. My cousin walks in. She literally banged down the door, came in my bed next to me, just hugged me. That's all she did. She just hugged me. And if I tell you, I never, to me, that was like everything. I didn't want to talk about it at the time. So just give that person a big hug. Just telling you there from, just hug it out. I promise you, it was just, for me, that was strength. Show up. That was strength. She barged in my room, just gave me a huge hug, and she just hugged me in my bed for hours, just hugging me. That's it.
Show up. Right. So I think that's a great way to end, to both Amy and to Sarah, for showing up tonight, for continuing to show up and share your emotions, showing up for others as you are, that strength that others need as they kind of work their way through their own experiences, and to SBH for showing up for each and every one of you, and for all of those that are watching tonight. I'm incredibly grateful that you invited me tonight. Thank you for reaching out, spending this hour with us, and I should wish each and every one of you a happy, healthy, successful, sensitive Purim together this year, and we only see revealed good as we move forward into the
night. Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody. Take good care. Good night. Good night.
Good
Good night,
night.
everyone. Thank you again, Rachel. Take care. Good night.